It's been arguably the most intriguing and most important series in the Big Ten for the past decade. It's Ohio State, Michigan State in Columbus this Saturday with the Buckeyes as a big favorite against Sparty and Michigan State, and both teams actually undefeated in the Big Ten. We got Kyle Teeley on the line from the only colors on SB Nation's platform for Michigan State. Kyle, how you doing today?
Doing pretty well, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Appreciate you stopping by as always, breaking down Michigan State football for us. Is Ohio State 20 points better than Michigan State?
You know, it's hard to argue against that. Just the way they've performed, man for man, probably not. They're probably not that much better than Michigan State, especially in some of the head-to-head battles that'll be going on. But what they've done so far this year, you can't argue with. They're an elite team that has legit national championship hopes.
Absolutely. What hit me was kind of a double punch, counter punch in regards to my thought process. When I saw the line, the initial reaction was 20 points. That's ridiculous. Then I thought, they were pretty good. Michigan State in 2017. They came to Columbus. They ended up going 10-3 and won the Holiday Bowl, 45-3. And to me, this series has been intriguing. Again, as I said off the top, the most meaningful games in the Big Ten over the past decade, especially since Urban Meyer came to Ohio State, and some of his biggest losses to Michigan State. And Ohio State winning big has typically been the hurdle, has been Michigan State. Certainly that first run in 2014 going to East Lansing and winning. So the game's been monumental. But I think Ohio State does have that talent advantage to where it could get out of hand if Michigan State's not playing a near A game. If they come with their D game and Ohio State's on with the A game, certainly anything's possible. But 20 points seems awfully heavy. This offense, Kyle, in regards to the production, is a bit of a mystery. So to do that, meaning have an explosive production output against a MAC team is one thing, but maybe last week give some legitimate hope to some offense that can be sustained against a decent Indiana defense, putting up the 40 points. Your thoughts about the performance last week and how the offense is progressing?
You know, I've been calling this offense, it's cliche, but I've been calling it Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde all season long, because one week they'll come out and everything will click and it looks like they have a plan and all of the small things all go well. And then the next week, they're flat on their face. Things just go terribly wrong. It's hard to explain why, but it's been an every other week thing, which doesn't line up great for this week. But if they're to change that, there's obviously reason. They have skill on offense. They have the ability to put up points against anyone, against good defenses throughout the Big Ten. There's no reason why this team, when it's playing its best, can't score 30 points. That's especially with the defense that'll set them up in short fields. Brian Lewerke, it comes down every single time to his ability to be accurate. Not only does he need to complete passes and find the open receivers, he struggles putting the passes in areas where the receivers can not only make the catch, but then make the catch and run. A lot of times they leave yards out there because a receiver will catch the ball, but because it's a younger receiver, they'll make the catch and it'll take them to the ground. So instead of a catch and run for 15 yards, you have a third down catch for 7 yards and you have to punt. So it's the small things that have held this offense back. When they're on, everything's clicking, and you don't even notice. When they're off, it's a missed protection, a missed open receiver, that kind of thing. And they're not talented enough to overcome those small details.
Right now, it's a 60% completion percentage for Brian Lewerke, 10 touchdowns and 1 pick after a pretty awful 2018 ratio that also could be attributed, obviously, to injury, not to knock the young man after coming off a nice sophomore season in 2017. Elijah Collins having a nice season at 5.3 yards per carry. Where do you think he rates in regards to what a number one running back should be at Michigan State? Because I think, as I commented to our discussion last time, I haven't seen that kind of back at Michigan State, surprisingly, for quite a long time.
Yeah, he is that number one back that everyone in the country is looking for. He's got the patience. He's not a burner by any stretch, but he's got the explosive running that he can bust a run for 30 plus yards. The only drawback so far and it has nothing to do with his play on the field, he's not getting enough touches. He's not getting enough carries. The offense, whether it's because he's young still and they don't fully trust him yet, or it's situational and they need to pass the ball more, he's just not getting the touches that you would like to see out of a A1 back who can really change a game for you. And especially a team that benefits greatly when their defense gets time to relax, gets time to rest on the sideline.
Yeah, that would seem to be the formula. Not that you want to play ultra conservative, but the clock management against an Ohio State, and then also to take advantage of Michigan State's defense would seem to be part of the formula. Speaking of which, Kyle, I did not see the Indiana game. I saw you play Tulsa. I saw the Arizona State game start to finish. May have seen some other action in there as well. And this is obviously a defense that we have not seen any offense take advantage of in a year and a half. But Indiana made plays, especially in the passing game. Were there any concerns about what you saw there?
I don't think concerns is the right word. Give credit where it's due. Indiana had a great game plan. They game planned the defense specifically. They changed up some of the things they've done. They really killed Michigan State's defense with the underneath passing. And that's a part of the defense. That is always going to be open in the Mark D'Antonio defense. You're going to be able to dink and dunk. They bet that you either won't want to dink and dunk all the way down the field, or because you're dealing with college athletes, there's going to be an errant pass. There's going to be a quarterback who holds on to the ball too long. A mistake is going to be made that they'll be able to take advantage of. To Indiana's credit, they didn't really make those big mistakes. They were able to move the ball down the field, and then in the fourth quarter, when the defense was a little bit more tired, then they were able to take some shots. Then they were able to go downfield. I wouldn't call it a concern because I think you know how good this defense is. Indiana had a great game plan. I don't think that there's too many teams that are going to be able to play perfectly through that stretch and make the defense have to give up those intermediate chunks of yards.
Kyle Thiele's on the line from the Only Colors SB Nation's platform for Michigan State athletics. The Spartans take on the Buckeyes in Columbus, key Big Ten Eastern Division matchup as well. And I don't know if you agree with my take off the top, but to me, this has been the key series in the Big Ten. Maybe some of your memories, some of your high points, low points over the past decade covering Michigan State football against the Buckeyes.
It's weird considering both teams. If you were to ask either fan base point blank, who's your biggest rival, both fan bases would no doubt say Michigan. But like you said, both coaches, Urban Meyer before this, but D'Antonio has said this repeatedly, Ohio State's the measuring stick. Ohio State is the team that they want to replicate, that they want to be year in, year out, and that they measure the program against. I think the rivalry is real, and I think that when Michigan State's playing their best, they're at Ohio State's level. Some of the games, the Big Ten championship game was a real turning point for D'Antonio and his program. Getting that win against Ohio State, it wasn't, they won the Big Ten a few years later against Iowa in an amazing game, but they didn't beat Ohio State. There's something there that just makes it that much more special. And I think, to draw a parallel to this year, the way they beat them a few years ago in the sloppy field with their second and third string quarterback, I think that's the kind of sloppy game that Michigan State's going to need this year. So there's precedent for it. There's history that shows Michigan State can win a game like this against this Ohio State program.
Yeah, that is still cited. When you run down the Ohio State disappointments that have cost championship, Michigan State figures in prominently. That Buckeyes team in 2013 was undefeated, headed to the BCS championship game against Florida State. They got down 17. They came back, took a touchdown lead. Buckeye fans thought they were in a good place. Michigan State won the fourth quarter. The 2015 game, that Ohio State team was an NFL team that had just won the national championship. were not playing well, but undefeated, 10-0, whatever the record was at the time. The Spartans come in, they kick the last second field goal. You mentioned the sloppy game. A Michigan State kind of game that they need to play against in Ohio State. And like I say, that Ohio State group was ridiculous from a talent perspective. That was a gut-wrenching defeat to Buckeye fans. It's brought up all the time. And yeah, Michigan State, even going back to the 70s, certainly there was a 1998 game as well that cost Ohio State a probable national championship. They went 11-1 and finished number 2 in the nation.
Well, and you mentioned that 2013 team that Ohio State thought that they were all set to go to the BCS championship game. That was the year before the playoffs started. And to this day, if you ask Mark D'Antonio how he feels about that game, he desperately wishes that the playoffs would have started a year earlier. He thinks that team could have won a national championship. He thinks that team could have beaten Florida State in a playoff or championship game.
That's a tremendous take there, Kyle, because I was arguing at the time, why does Auburn get the free pass into the championship game? Michigan State has the same record. They beat an undefeated Ohio State team in the Big Ten championship game. They lost a controversial game, as I recall, at Notre Dame with a ton of fictitious pass interference calls. And Michigan State had just as much of a claim, and that's my knock on the BCS and now on the playoff, even though it affords 2 more teams the opportunity. And that, of course, was the team that marched on to win the Rose Bowl and finish in the top 3 or 4 in the nation. Tremendous Michigan State team. So when you look at Ohio State, when you mentioned D'Antonio looking at them as the measuring stick, and it's pretty obvious that's what the way it's been for, in a sense, decades with Michigan, but most recently in the last 15 to 20 years, and then even more concentrated under Urban Meyer and now Ryan Day. Is there a bit of a chip on the shoulders of, I don't know necessarily the players, but maybe the fan base, that when we beat Ohio State, we do it the old-fashioned way. We're the hardworking program. We have to play from behind. We don't have all the 5 stars. You know, we don't have the recruiting rankings all over the place with the stars all over the place. We got to do it with a lunch pail.
You know, I wouldn't say that there's a chip on the shoulder of the fan base. I think that there's kind of a universal recognition that Ohio State is that program. They are that good. There's almost more of a chip on the shoulder of the players. D'Antonio and the Michigan State program have done an amazing job recruiting Ohio. So some of their best players have been kids from Ohio, these 3-star players who would have loved to have gone to Ohio State, ended up going to Michigan State, you know, and then they get built up into these NFL players that they become, and they take their frustrations out on Ohio State. That's happened year in, year out. There's a bunch of big names who have marked that game as saying, this is the one that I want to show up for. This is the one that I want to show out for. So I really think it's more of a player-driven thing than it is any – obviously, there's conference rivalry at stake, but I don't think anyone in the fan base is really takes issue with the fact that Ohio State is regularly ranked ahead of Michigan State. Michigan, on the other hand, you know, that's a different conversation. But
sure. I think for both schools it is.
I would say so.
So what's the formula on Saturday for the upset win?
Rain, mud. No, seriously, though, Ohio State is an elite team. They have a great offense, but they're not going to do what Indiana did. They're not going to. Indiana changed their offense to beat the Michigan State defense. Ohio State's going to come in and say, our offense is just better. We're just going to do what we do and beat you. What that means is they're going to run the ball a lot. And against this Michigan State defense, that's welcome. You know, run the ball as much as you think you can, because you're going to find yourself in a lot of 3rd and longs. Fields is a great quarterback, and he's put up big numbers, but he's always done so play action, with crowded boxes. I would like to see him beat a team on his own, and I think that's the Michigan State game plan. I think they're going to make him try and beat them all game long. There's going to be options to take the ball back, and once that happens, then the offense needs to be on. There, you can't have inaccurate Brian Lewerke. You can't have drops by the wide receivers. The offensive line has to play the way they have the last few weeks, and not the way they did when they were really dealing with injuries early on. the offense needs to be perfect. There's no doubt about that. And then the defense, see if Ohio State can beat you playing left-handed.
Yeah, and so the narrative all week has been, what can Michigan State possibly do? They're playing this juggernaut that's been arguably the best team in the country. We also need to understand, and I'm sure you do, Ohio State has not faced a defense like this or anything close to it. So this is not going to be the walk in the park. We're gaining 10 and 12 yards every time we touch the ball and run a play kind of defense. They've seen this before, that Dwayne Haskins 50 touchdown unit last year that went nuts on just about everybody won a very ugly game. Sure, they won it by 20, but they won it on defense and special teams and a Michigan State offense that was crippled at that point. And Ohio State's offense didn't do much of anything until they got a lead and were able to run it a little bit in the fourth quarter late. But, man, that was an ugly game in Ohio State. Just did not have the running room or the passing lanes or the protection that they enjoyed just about the entire season when they went to East Lansing. So it should be fascinating, as always, Michigan State, Ohio State. Kyle, is there anything that we've missed?
No, I think it's going to come down to how the offense plays. If the offense puts the defense on the field more than they need to be, they're going to eventually give up those big chunk plays, and that's what's gonna happen. That's what's gonna kill the team and make last year happen all over again, where it's a close game throughout, and then Ohio State runs away in the fourth quarter. If the offense can play at its level, this one should be fun.
So we're going to point everyone to the Only Colors on SB Nation. I believe Kyle and the rest of the staff will have predictions there.
They'll be up today.
There you go. My weekly predictions, week 6 predictions as well, in the description section below. Just grab the link next to Voice of College Football Community. Kyle, we appreciate you stopping by as always.
Thanks for having me on.